A student in Vancouver raised $4,000 by selling keychains to pay off school lunch debts. Wait, on second thought, that's not a very happy story at all, right? Hey, what's the difference between free speech and hate speech? Well, the answer to that could determine whether Jeremy Christian dies in prison or not. And hey, we made it a full working week, 5 days without being canceled. That's good, right? Or maybe it's bad. I don't know. We're getting some mixed messages from you guys. Here's the story.
Whew, we made it. It's Friday. It's almost the weekend. It feels good. Welcome to the story. Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Haggerty. As I mentioned, this is our 5th show in a row right here at 6 o'clock. We made it our first full week. Thank you so much to everyone who's tuned in, given this a shot, and reached out to us using the hashtag HeyDan. And as I mentioned, we got a ton of feedback, more than I really even thought we were going to get. It was pretty awesome. Some of it brought a tear to my eye, and for different reasons. I want to share some of it with you tonight, but we only have so much time, so I thought maybe you should decide on what we should read. The good feedback or the bad. Head to kgw.com/vote and tell us what you want to hear. Don't worry, you won't hurt my feelings. All right, I'm going to start the story off tonight in a way that you're probably used to hearing it on the news. 8-year-old Keone Ching of Franklin Elementary has raised more than $4,000 by making keychains to help pay off lunch debts for other kids at his school. What a great kid. What a happy story. Right. The news does stories like this one all the time, but when we heard about Keone Ching's story, yeah, part of us did go, wow, what a great kid doing a really great thing, and that's true, but we also thought something else, something some of you have been saying, like Tyler G's mama on Twitter. A child raising money to pay off lunch debt. While I appreciate the kindness of this student, it's the responsibility of adults to fix this, not children. This is indicative of a much larger problem, families that cannot afford basic needs. Devin Haskins joining us now. So you covered this today.
Yeah.
You went for the ceremony where they handed over the giant
The big
check.
giant oversized check to this 8-year-old, or the 8-year-old did to the principal.
Sure.
Great kid. I don't think we should take away from what Keone did. I think what he did is awesome.
Yep.
I think it's inspiring. But I wanted to ask his principal one big question. Why isn't school lunch free?
That is a question that I think has been asked on a federal level by a number of different folks. Right now, we work hard to make sure that we're following the state and federal guidelines. And you'll see a number of people, Keone, PTAs, teachers, lunch ladies, step forward, and it's not an uncommon event across the country to see big-hearted, kind people step forward and really help those that are in need.
Keone, one of those people, right? Steps up more than $4,000. What does this $4,000 really do, though, to the grand scheme of things?
It seems like a lot, but it's really a drop in the bucket. And we asked a bunch of school districts kind of their numbers, how much far in debt they are, and we got a couple back. Vancouver has $144,000 in debt. Evergreen, $129,000. The list just keeps going. Hillsborough, $149,000. Beaverton, $128,000. And Dan, what's staggering is Salem Kaiser, $445,000. Still waiting to hear back from Gresham and Portland schools.
$500,000.
$500,000.
Wow. So what happens to that debt?
School districts, 2 of them I talked to, said that they accrue that debt. They basically just keep accruing that debt until a student graduates. But they said they will never withhold a diploma from that student.
All right.
So, yeah.
Devin Haskins, thank you so much. Now, let's get to our big story tonight. The Oregon legislative session kicks off on Monday. They've got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. The only problem is it is a short session, meaning they only have 35 days to do everything on the entire list, and we're talking complicated stuff. Of course, there is cap and trade. They also want to tackle wildfire prevention, gun reform, campaign contribution limits, bans on flavored vaping products, and honestly, that barely scratches the surface. There are dozens and dozens of more important bills. The biggest one, I will say, is going to be cap and trade. We've been breaking that bill down for you, down to the very basics here on the story, like as simple as what is carbon dioxide and where does it come from. Last night we got a comment, though, on Twitter from Judy Weimer, who said she felt like she was being talked down to a bit with that report. She asked if we really think most of our viewers don't know about CO2 and the problems it causes. Judy, great feedback. Thank you so much. You know we love hearing from all of you out there using the hashtag HeyDan. And we know that a lot of you do probably know these basic things. But this is complicated stuff, and we want to make sure that everybody is on the same page as we move forward. That's why we started with CO2. Now, Pat Doris has another little explainer on the element of cap and trade. Where do all carbon emissions in Oregon come from?
Your car or truck. Yep, seriously. Okay, maybe not your car if you drive electric, but mostly it's your car. The Oregon Department of Energy reports that in 2016, transportation made up 39% of all the greenhouse gases emitted in the state. Cars and trucks are actually putting out less per vehicle, but there's a lot more vehicles in the state than there used to be, so the whole number's growing. The state reports the other big sources are homes and commercial buildings, mostly because they use a lot of energy for heat and lights. Business and agriculture make up the rest.
Listen, this is a divisive time. That is probably something you don't need to hear from me. But for the most part, Oregon's leaders, Democrats and Republicans alike, they do agree that carbon emissions are dangerous. They're just not really quite sure what to do about it, right? Republicans say cap and trade is unrealistic. Democrats say that doesn't matter. We need to limit emissions. Laurel Porter taped this week's episode of Straight Talk today, right here in the studio, and she had the top Republican and top Democrat on at the same time. See, they can get along. They did get a little feisty, though, when Senate Minority Leader Herman Bertschuger said the Democrats were using scare tactics.
That's climate denial. And I do not believe in climate denial.
I have never been a climate denier. I've always said that climate change is real. So don't try to paint me as a climate denier.
Well, in my opinion, if you do not support a bill like this, then you're not taking the issue seriously.
Senator Bertschuger also didn't rule out another walkout this session. The session starts on Monday, so of course we'll keep a close eye on all of this for you. Remember, if you got questions about this, and I know you do, send them our way using the hashtag HeyDan. Also, you can download Straight Talk as a podcast. We want to turn now to the trial that a lot of people have been watching and talking about. It's the trial of Jeremy Christian, a self-proclaimed white supremacist. In 2017, he was charged with terrifying 2 black girls on Portland's MAX train and stabbing 3 men, killing 2 of them. There's a lot to get into, a lot to talk about when it comes to Christian. The guy faces murder charges, biased crime charges as well for intimidating those girls. If he's convicted, he could spend the rest of his life in prison. And yet in court, we've seen him smiling and waving, even at one point turning to the crowd and asking them, quote, if they were ready to smash Portland's fairy tale. But one thing we want to talk about here, and we're going to bring in Maggie Vespa to do so. She's been our reporter focusing on this trial since its onset and even before that. But it's something we've seen that's been reoccurring here, and it focuses on a part of his defense.
Exactly. I mean, we're at the end of week 1 now, so all these things are kind of becoming clear as far as strategy is concerned. And what we want to talk about is their defense specific to his angry racist rant on board that MAX train right before the stabbings. His lawyers are basically saying that was free speech. That in and of itself wasn't a crime, and that's becoming clear. They're drilling down on it when they question witnesses. So we want to play 2 clips now. You're going to see the 2 girls, those black teenage girls, one wearing a hijab, testifying. And I want you to listen to how Christian's defense lawyer questions them on the stand. Take a listen.
Do you recall Mr. Christian making any comments specifically to you?
No.
You said he said something about Muslims, and then you followed up by saying he said something about Jews and Christians and Muslims. Do you remember that?
Yes.
So it was quite clear that he had something against all 3 religions. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Those girls had such a hard time testifying. It was really tough for them, clearly. That said, what's the point of all of this? What's the point of those questions? Well, the attorneys are zeroing in on the intimidation charges, the biased crime charges, and now because of that, the jury has a complex question on their hands, a complex legal question. Basically, Christian's rant, of course, was horrible. I mean, it was racist, it was repugnant, but they're saying, was it protected free speech? Was it legal? Did he have the right to give it? Well, we have legal analysts that we brought on board here at KGW to help us cover this trial, and they point out there are so many precedents here in cases like this. A big one, the National Socialist Party versus Skokie, a case in the 70s that went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and basically Neo-Nazis wanted to march through a mostly Jewish Chicago suburb wearing swastikas. There were tons of protests. People were terrified. Ultimately, the courts decided the neo-Nazis should be allowed to do this because the government can't ban the speech ahead of time. So that in mind, we turned to our analysts and asked them the question, the same one that now the jury has to answer, especially in Oregon. What's the line? When does repugnant free speech become a crime? Here's what one of the analysts said.
It has to be accompanied by an intent to cause a result, like menacing or threatening or intimidation. That's the difference. It can be sometimes the difference between making an I feel statement and an I plan to do something statement.
So that was local defense attorney Lisa Ludwig, and she says that line appears to be what Christian's defense team is trying to highlight and just make clear for the jury.
Again, we're talking about the intimidation charges.
We are.
Those are by far not the most serious charges involved in this case.
100%. So we've been covering this extensively. Jeremy Christian faces 2 counts of first-degree murder for stabbing and killing Ricky Best and Talija Nomkai Meche, and he faces a count of attempted murder for wounding Micah Fletcher. But this free speech argument is part of a bigger strategy. Remember, Christian is using the insanity defense. He admits to the stabbings, but the defense is arguing that he has a diminished mental capacity and he stabbed those 3 men in his mind in self-defense. So they're telling the jury, if you decide the speech was legal, then, and this drew groans in court, to be honest, were the victims of the stabbing in the wrong for trying to force Christian off the train because of what he was saying. So listen to this clip from opening statements. It really sums it up.
Mr. Fletcher's attempt to throw Mr. Christian off the MAX train was a felony. Mr. Christian, because of his free speech rights, no matter how much he aggravated and annoyed other people, no matter how loud he was, he had every right to stay on that train just as much as anybody else.
So they're basically saying that this perspective, this argument about free speech changes the perspective and the argument over the stabbings.
Right. So far, they've kind of made it clear that they think it's kind of a domino effect.
Do they think this could work?
So, obviously they're not telling us. They seem to in court. We asked our legal analysts, and both who we talked to today, the defense attorney and the prosecutor, think that's definitely a stretch, but even further, the prosecutor, a retired prosecutor, sort of true to form, thinks there's no way that could work. The defense attorney thinks it's an interesting argument.
All right. Maggie Vespa, thank you so much. Again,
you're very welcome.
Continue to reach out to Maggie if you have questions about this case. Reach out to us here using the hashtag #HeyDan.
The questions keep coming about Oregon's insanely confusing rollout of real IDs. Here's one, for instance. Can you use a voided out-of-state real ID card in Oregon after the deadline? Did you get all that? Be honest. And the Blazers are about to play their first game against the Lakers since Kobe Bryant died. On any other day, this would be a rivalry match, but not tonight.
I just think this is one of those stories that transcends sports. This is something that everyone can relate to, and I think that's why this hits different.
112 people move to Oregon every single day. How do we come up with that number? Well, about 41,000 people a year move to Oregon. Divided by 365, that equals 112 new people in our state a day. It only took like 4 journalists huddled around a calculator to do that math. We're journalists. So this segment is for you, the 112. We've been doing stories on Real ID, and we've been getting a lot of questions about this messy rollout here in Oregon. A lot of you, the 112, showed up with driver's licenses from other states that are already Real ID compliant. The question is, will your voided Real ID from that other state still get you on a plane here in Oregon? We're talking about the license that Oregon punched a hole in when they gave you that new Oregon driver's license. We asked this question to the Port of Portland, who told us that a hole-punched ID would not be valid for them. But TSA, interestingly enough, really couldn't give us a good answer. In fact, they said, quote, "It is an interesting scenario that you have presented." More or less, they didn't know. They just advised to get a Real ID or a passport by the October 1st deadline. Keep sending us these Real ID questions or questions in general using the hashtag #HeyDan, and we will keep answering them.
Well, the weather story today is how warm it has been. It's just amazing. Still at 62 degrees. Keep in mind, we usually top out around 49 this time of the year. So by now, we'd be, on average in the low to mid 40s. We're at 62 right now. Cloud cover, keeping it warm. but it didn't keep us from getting warm. We didn't have any sunshine today, but we didn't have any rain either. So here's the list of the records that fell today, topped by the Portland Airport, 62. Right here at KTW in downtown Portland, we hit 60. Vancouver, 62. Troutdale, a new record at 63. And McMinnville, 61. And these were not the warmest temperatures in the state. For that, we go over to Eastern Oregon, where it was 69 in Pendleton. So consider, it was almost 70 degrees in parts of Oregon today, here on the last day of January. Pretty amazing. Roseburg also 67 down in Southwest Oregon. So we're going to go from that to talking about skiing, of course, right? I tell you what, this weather roller coaster we've been on all month just continues, and it's compressed now because it's really warm today. It's going to get cold tomorrow, and the skiing is going to be so good on Super Bowl Sunday. So therein lies the dilemma. Do you ski or do you Super Bowl? Or do you do both? You ski in the morning, Super Bowl in the afternoon, and feel better about it. So perhaps that's the way to go. We see the snow level jump up around the middle of the week, but I think that's going to be the last time we see that kind of warming for a while. We should get some more cooler weather towards next weekend. So for Portland tonight, cloudy and warm. The rain begins after midnight, turns to showers tomorrow. We'll have showers on Sunday, both rain and snow, and finally a dry day on Monday. Dan, did you enjoy the warm weather?
It felt a little strange, to be honest with you, to feel this warm at the end of January.
You bet.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. So if you've been checking out the story this week, you might have noticed that we haven't been spending as much time on another story that you've probably been seeing everywhere else, and that's the death of Kobe Bryant and his daughter and the 7 other people who died in a helicopter crash last Sunday. Now, one of the biggest tenets that we have for you here at the story is that we only do stories when we feel like we won't be wasting your time. Frankly, we felt that we kind of couldn't bring anything new to you, nothing new to the table that you haven't already seen on NBC Nightly News, which airs right before us. Tonight, that's different because it is the first time the Lakers are playing since that crash that killed Bryant and all those other people, and it is against the Blazers at the Staples Center. Orlando Sanchez is there live for us. I think the point that you make better than anybody else, Orlando, we talked about this a lot even before you left, is that Kobe's death kind of transcends the game of basketball.
Yeah, Dan, and we talked about that back in Portland. Now, being here at the Staples Center, it still holds true. When's the last time you've heard a head coach say the game is secondary? That's exactly what head coach Terry Stotts said today, and saying tonight is about Kobe Bryant. So even the players and the coaches for the opposing team know what tonight is going to be all about. And even going outside the Staples Center, something that's been going on since Sunday when Kobe passed away, is the thousands and thousands of people that have left behind mementos and, knickknacks and basketballs and jerseys and tennis shoes, just to show their support and tribute to Kobe Bryant. It's really been a unique situation and something that I've never seen before and never been a part of. And so seeing all of the emotion outside of the Staples Center has truly been unique. We've seen people cry and also on the flip side, share laughs and enjoy their favorite Kobe Bryant moment. So that's been really special to see the spectrum of emotions that are going on even tonight as people pack outside of the Staples Center. Now in here, the Portland Trail Blazers are impacted by this. They're trying to fight through the pain of losing a friend, especially for a guy like Carmelo Anthony, who didn't even make the trip with this team, and Trevor Ariza, who was teammates with Kobe Bryant and friends. So a lot of them are just trying to cope in the best way they can, and that's what tonight is going to be all about in celebrating an NBA legend. We're going to witness history here inside the Staples Center. There's no other way to describe it because it really hasn't happened before, at least to this magnitude. And so as we head into the 7:30 tip-off with the Blazers and the Lakers, there's going to be a special tribute before this game. So stay tuned for that, and we'll have much more coverage out here in LA coming up tonight at 11 o'clock. Dan, we'll send it back to you, man.
Orlando Sanchez, thank you for the live report tonight, sir.
Who do you got for Sunday? Chiefs? Niners? Is the coin flip going to come up heads or tails, maybe land perfectly on its side? Oregon's made it easier than ever to place prop bets without even leaving your couch. Now there's a company making sure that you're not getting ripped off while you're doing it.
Not only is it a tragedy to lose a superstar like Kobe Bryant at 41 that had so much to give, but there's this whole other human side to it. This thing has layers to it, man.
So who do you like on Sunday, for the Super Bowl? J-Lo or Shakira? I'm a J-Lo guy. I know it's controversial. Don't worry about it. Also, Chiefs or Niners? Honestly, you could probably place bets on just about anything nowadays, especially with Oregon's new gambling app. This is a billion-dollar industry. And, of course, now there's got to be companies like one in Portland to actually keep an eye on the millions of transactions that are being made, making sure that there isn't any fraud. Let's bring in Joe Ranieri. He's here to talk about this company in Portland that's doing what they can to try and curb fraud in this new age of online gambling.
And we hear about fraud all the time, and no matter what business we're talking about, it seems. Now, the company is called iOvation. It's a TransUnion company, and they recently released a report showing how prevalent fraud is when it comes to online gambling. Now, those red dots you see behind us are all fraudulent transactions taking place across the globe. From 2018 to 2019, they found a 72% increase in what they call bonus abuse. That's when a gambling site offers some type of incentive, for example, giving a new player house money. What's been happening is a player creates multiple accounts and receives that bonus multiple times.
Fraudsters, they come in, and these are pretty coordinated fraud rings where they'll go in and they set up, 100 or 1,000 new accounts to exploit that bonus. So it can really have a big effect on gambling operators.
Okay, so the Oregon app is pretty new. I mean, it's just a few months old at this point. This is its first Super Bowl, right? So I assume there's going to be a spike in usage. What is this company doing to benefit the people who have been using it?
Well, it basically comes down to making sure you know where your bets are being placed at. Now, iOvation monitors it and protects about 35,000 different websites and apps. Here's what Angie White had to say about that.
With the Oregon State Lottery, they've definitely put a lot of protections in place for fraud prevention, things like that. So I think they're definitely doing their due diligence to make sure that consumers are protected.
I will say I've been hearing from a lot of people who have never talked about gambling before, who are thinking about doing it now. The Super Bowl is coming up and it's right in the palm of their hand. Any advice for people who are going to try this for the first time?
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be coming out of the woodwork over the next couple of days placing their bets. Just make sure whatever you go to place your bets, make sure it's a reputable website or app.
All right, sounds good. Joe, thank you. If you have other questions, please reach out to us here. Use the hashtag HeyDan. In the meantime, when we come back, we've been getting a lot of feedback this week. We're going to read some. We'll read some good, maybe some bad, whatever you'd like, when the story continues. All right, let's read some comments to end the story tonight. We asked you off the top of the show to vote. Did you want me to read our first week's positive reviews or negative? And honestly, it touches my heart. It says a lot about the people who are watching this newscast. You picked the good, which I really was not expecting. So shame on me for that. But we hear from Gary. He watched the live stream tonight. He says, I love the show. Appreciate the format. It makes me feel like I'm part of the conversation compared to regular news. Gary, that's like the entire premise. Thank you so much. Gene saying, I thoroughly enjoy the new show. Dan appears to be at ease in this new format. I do feel at ease. Katrina, she's saying, nice to see KGW transforming with the times. Keep up the great work. And Bob and Gail, really nice, longer, in-depth stories. Good job. That one also ends with Dan's pace and energy tire me out, though, so that's kind of a hybrid. Want to say thank you so much for watching us during this inaugural week of The Story. And while the good reviews were fun to read, the bad ones are kind of funny. I'll post them on my Facebook page. That's the end of the story.
This is KGW News at